Hello, and welcome to the Badhumanist likes and dislikes for the Havoc Demon Hunter. In this video, I'll give you 3 likes and 3 dislikes for the Havoc Demon Hunter, as well as a kind of overall summary here at the very end. If you want a more in-depth look at Havoc, please go ahead and check out my Havoc Demon Hunter video that I have up on the channel already. Again, it's a bit long, but again, I do go in-depth, ability by ability, talent by talent, show off the rotation. So again, if you want a more in-depth look at the Havoc Demon Hunter, go ahead and check that video out. You should have a link up in the corner as well down in the description. So like number 1, I really enjoy its active play style. Again, you have a lot of movement going on. You have the ability to have a lot of really cool, iconic abilities. Things like Eye Beam. You have the Blade Dance, kind of jumping around damage. You of course have the mobility with things like Fell Rush, which can in some builds be used for DPS as well. So yeah, it's a very active feeling play style. You feel like you're moving around doing a lot, and there's a lot of talents that kind of help aid that mobility. Again, your main cooldown is a leap, so again, a lot of movement going on, active play style. 2, speaking of that cooldown, is Metamorphosis is a super strong cooldown. You really feel empowered. Not only do you look empowered because you're a giant demon, but you really do feel empowered as well. It lasts a long time. And again, it completely changes your abilities, right? Instead of just having your Chaos Strike and your Blade Dance, you get a more empowered version of those during that period of time. So again, very, very rewarding cooldown to have. The third thing is, and I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, and I'm okay with that, is I like the fact that you have the option to take the momentum build. Now, I found that momentum build was not as competitive. At least I wasn't able to play it as competitive as a demonic build, but I like the fact that you can do it. You can take talents. Again, you can take Fell Mastery. You can take momentum. Again, you can take talents that are going to really work off of this, and then use abilities like Vengeful Retreat and Fell Rush as a core part of your rotation to again really have a very different playstyle than anything that WoW has ever seen. Right? It really does feel like a far more active and engaged kind of playstyle. And I know a lot of people complain about the kind of like auto-targeting, just hit your abilities type playstyle, and they like a more active playstyle. They like the kind of more action-oriented or MOBA-oriented type gameplay. And while this is not the same thing, I definitely think that it's a bit closer than anything WoW has ever seen before. So again, while you might hate momentum, and I understand if you do, the fact that it's an option and that there's a number of talents that kind of feed into that, I do think is a good thing to have. Now on the dislike side, my first dislike is going to be that Meta's cooldown is super long. So again, currently, it lasts 30 seconds, but it's a 4-minute cooldown. So again, it's about up, I think it's what, 1/8, if I remember correctly, something like that. So its uptime is relatively low, and again, that's where all your damage comes from. You have huge bursts, and you kind of just settle down low until you can meta again, and you burst back up and settle down low. And I do think that the length of this cooldown and the damage you do outside of meta is a problem for Havoc. I do think that they either need to tune meta down and then buff up your outside abilities, because the damage you're doing outside of meta is pitiful, in all honesty. Again, it's one of those things where you pretty much, the benefit of the demonic build is the increased meta uptime, because again, you get the demon form for 8 seconds after finishing your Eye Beam cast, which again is a 30-second cooldown, so you're getting 8 seconds of meta every 30 seconds, and that really helps the uptime of meta, which really helps smooth out your damage, which is one of the reasons why I like demonic so much. But again, your other option is Nemesis, but again, that's only the 25% increased damage for a minute, so there's still half the time, right? Basically, half of your time when you're not. Now again, combining Nemesis with Metamorphosis with the 2 and a 4-minute cooldown obviously gives you a huge burst, but again, in those down times, it's down. So if a priority target pops out and you don't have a cooldown, you're not going to be doing much help. So again, I do think that that's something that Blizzard might want to look into, is finding a way of how to smooth that out. I think Demonic gets us there, but again, I do think they might need to tune some of the abilities to put more of the damage outside. It does remind me a bit of Shadow Priest with the damage inside and outside of Void form. being a big issue. My next dislike is going to be Demonic Appetite. So while I mentioned that I like the active playstyle, this is just frustrating. Okay, so Demonic Appetite allows Chaos Strike to have a chance to spawn as a Soul Fragment, and consuming any Soul Fragment grants 30 Fury. So basically, you can break off souls with Chaos Strike, but they generate randomly around you, right? And without the ability to kind of pull them in, like you would have in something like Vengeance, you have to kind of go run into them. And there are plenty of boss fights where they're going to spawn in places that you can't go. And so to have that be what your Fury generation is going to be based off of, I just think is relatively frustrating. So again, I like this ability. I like the idea. They need something that allows you to pull in those soul fragments, so that you don't have a soul fragment spawn in front of the boss. You go to grab it and get hit by a cleave attack or something and die. My last dislike is going to be the fact that Nemesis as a 100 talent as a cooldown is relatively boring. So again, it's interesting in the sense that if you're in a dungeon or again on a single target that's going to last for more than a minute, you just get a straight 25% damage increase to it. But that's boring. And it's just, again, the kind of one target. So in Mythic Plus, if you're fighting a bunch of mobs and they're different types, that's normally not the case. But if they are, you're not going to get any benefit beyond that one target that dies. On a boss, you'll gain the full minute, of course. And again, on Mythic Plus bosses, that can be valuable because the time of those fights is relatively short, so you'll have a good uptime on that. But on an actual boss that lasts 8, 9, 10 minutes, I just think it's a relatively boring cooldown. It stacks great with meta, as I mentioned before, but to basically just to increase your damage, and that's it. It's just kind of like a passive thing that's happening on in the background. To me, that's not the most engaging. And for a spec that's so engaged, right? There, like momentum, demonic. There's so many things that really kind of engage in with the playstyle. Nemesis is just kind of like, oh yeah, you're doing more damage. Great. So again, I'm not a fan of these boring cooldowns, and there are other ways of increasing our damage without, while I should say not without, but while generating more engaging playstyles as well. So those are my likes and my dislikes. My overall thought about Havoc is I think that again it seems to be relatively competitive with other hybrid DPS classes. Again, currently the pure DPS classes seem to be doing a bit more DPS. It could just be down to tuning, but with the other hybrids, it does seem to be scaling similarly with those. Again, it can be very fun. I think it's fascinating that you can have a build that has basically two buttons, right? If you go with Demon Blades and you go in a build like this that has a lot of passives, you basically have Chaos Strike and Eye Beam as being like your only abilities. Technically speaking, I have Fell Barrage here as well, but you could easily take another ability like Trail of Ruin, right? And then I would honestly have two abilities for single target, and then you just add in Blade Dance for multi-target. So it's interesting that you have a class that can have two abilities and scale all the way up, I believe, to something like 7 actives or 7 abilities at the most. So very few classes have the ability to scale like that from having so few to so many abilities, but stay engaging no matter what. So what do you like and dislike about Havoc Demon Hunter? Let me know down there in the comments. If you like the video, give me a like. If you dislike it, give me a dislike. Please go ahead and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'll be doing in-depth reviews and these quick like-dislike videos for all of the classes on the beta. So again, if I have already done one, go ahead and check that video out on the channel. If not, it will be coming up shortly. Warrior is the next class I'll be doing, by the way. So go ahead and subscribe if you're looking forward to that. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you in those future videos.